Hi, this is Tiffany Dahlquist, and I'm doing my Think Aloud for Stone Fox. I chose this book because it's one that I have in my library and I've heard a lot about, but I haven't actually read it yet. I've heard great things about it, so I figured this would be a good way to kind of pique my interest, and it really did. So after this, I'll probably start reading the actual novel um, on my own for leisure. But all right, let's get started. So looking at the title page, a few different things kind of popped out to me. Throughout the entire book, I did a lot of inferring. And one of the things that I inferred from the title page was that the boy and the dog have a really good relationship. The dog seems to be trying to play with the boy, and the boy looks happy to be around the dog. So that kind of just shows that they're at least comfortable with one another. So that's how I made that inference. A lot of times with my third graders, I always try and throw a prediction in the beginning. So my prediction for this one was the boy and the dog are going to go on some kind of an adventure throughout the book. At this point, I really didn't have any idea of what kind of adventure they would be going on. From the looks of it, it seems pretty pleasant, so I was expecting, kind of a fun story. For my connections, I connected with the joy on the boy's face while he was looking at his dog. I had a dog myself when I was younger. It was our family dog, and so I was able to make a connection there, just thinking back about my feelings towards our family dog and comparing them to the look on the boy's face. For some questions, I was kind of curious about when the story takes place. There really weren't any clues in the picture about when it would be taking place because, the house and the clothing of the boy could really be any time. I've seen some people recently, if they live on a farm, they wear that kind of clothing because they don't want to get their regular clothes dirty. There's no technology in the background, but it could be something where maybe it's just off to the side. So I was curious about that. For page 3, again, I did some more inferring. I inferred that grandfather is a really important character, or important person in the chapter, because they named the entire chapter grandfather. So that kind of gives me a hint that it's going to be a lot about him. I also inferred that the boy and the grandfather get along very well because they talk about playing together and just the fact that they were able to laugh about a prank that grandfather played. I did have some questions while I was reading it. So I was asking, why was the grandfather laying in the bed looking so sad? Is he sick? Did something bad happen on the farm? And then I was also kind of wondering where the parents were. And because it just says that he's living with his grandfather. So I was just curious about where that, or what happened there. For page 4, I made some connections. My mom would always say that she was going to give my breakfast to our family dog if I didn't get up fast enough. So I thought that was kind of funny about Willie potentially losing his breakfast to the chickens, and that he actually did at one point. So I made a big connection there, just remembering, when I wanted to go back to sleep before getting ready for school and I had to quickly jump up and get out there because my mom was going to give away my breakfast. For the inferring, I said Willie knew something was wrong with grandfather when he wouldn't get up. So there was that. They never said that he was scared or worried, but it was something that just the way he was acting, just the fact that he was saying, I don't want to play anymore, and grandfather didn't answer, you could kind of tell, and then Willie running away, you could tell that he was upset, that he knew that something wasn't right. For page 5, for synthesizing new information, I talked about that we were learning that the dog's name is Searchlight. And I inferred that they call the dog Searchlight because of the white spot on the top of her head. I inferred that Doc Smith is an older woman because they talk about her snow white hair and that her skin is covered in wrinkles. And then before I had actually read the section where it talks about she had a white spot on her forehead, I was questioning, why do they call the dog Searchlight? And again, that I inferred that they called her because of the white spot because they didn't actually say, this is why we named her Searchlight. So on page 6, I did some critical thinking. I said Willie is running in a panic because he knows that something isn't right with his grandfather. Just knowing that he's not doing well. He knew where the doctor would be and he was running to get some help. And then I inferred that Doc Smith stopped reading because she knew something wasn't right. She had been reading the book the entire time, and then the second Willie said that, he didn't sing or play music or anything before going to bed, she knew that something was wrong.
Attention staff.
I'm going to preface this from here on out. They just made an announcement in my school saying that there might be a fire drill going off. So I apologize if I don't pause the video before then. Anyways, back to this. For page 7, I talked about inferring that grandfather always plays his harmonica before going to bed, just because Doc Smith even asked your grandfather went to bed without playing his harmonica. So that just tells me that that was something he usually did. Synthesizing new information, grandfather was crying while he was laying in bed because his beard was full of tears, and that just kind of brought me also back to when they were talking about pulling the prank with dressing up as a scarecrow, that he cried so much his beard filled up with tears. The questioning I had was, why did the fact that grandfather went to bed without playing music concern Doc Smith? So again, I can infer what they're trying to get at, but they don't actually answer that question. And then connections, I'm usually curious about what's going on when a loved one is at the doctor, so I ask a lot of questions like Willie was. He was just asking, what's that for? What are you doing? I like to know a lot of that too, just because like when my grandma's in the hospital, I like to know what's going on because they tend to have to do a lot of the same things. And so it's something that I can talk to the doctor the next time, or I can talk to my mom about if I'm there and she's not, and just tell them, this is what happened. So yeah. So for page 8 and 9, I had some questions. I was wondering if Searchlight senses that something is wrong with grandfather. Why is Doc Smith asking about the crops, and if grandfather owes someone money? So I asked the one about Searchlight because from prior knowledge, I know that some dogs can sense when something bad is going on. Even just my own personal connection is when, I was feeling sick when I was younger, my dog would be especially tender towards me and would want to cuddle with me and try and make me feel better. And so it just makes me wonder if Searchlight can sense that with grandfather. And then I was questioning why Doc Smith was asking so many questions, just because she wasn't quite coming out with what was wrong. She just was asking a lot of questions. I inferred that Willie is feeling worried about what is happening to grandfather, just the way he's acting and why that he's kind of getting frustrated towards the end of this page. And then making connections, I said I can relate to Willie when he started to get agitated when Doc Smith was asking all the questions. I have felt that way when loved ones were in the hospital. I was asked a lot of questions, but no one was really giving me much for answers. So I understand his frustration there. And then the last couple pages, I synthesized some new information. Grandfather has given up wanting to live, and he is only the only one that can make himself better. So that was a lot of new information coming in at one time. And then making connections. I have learned a lot about mental health issues while working in the school system. So using my prior knowledge, I was able to understand that sometimes mental health problems can cause a physical reaction, not just a mental one. And then I did have a couple questions. How is Willie going to figure out what is wrong with grandfather? How is Willie going to fix what is wrong? And will grandfather really get better? And like I said, now it's kind of piqued my interest at this point, so I'm definitely going to have to pull that book out and finish reading it myself, and maybe it'll be one that I do with my students and actually do a full think aloud with. But thanks for listening.